How do I know when it's time to make the jump from part-time to full-time photographer? What's up, y'all, and welcome to Monday Magic. My name is Rob Green. I am a photographer and educator here in Fort Worth, Texas. And each week, I am here to give you tips, tricks, and inspiration to help you build your business, wow your clients, and make photo magic. And today, we are going to hit on one of the questions that I get all the time from photographers. One of the questions I love to talk about with photographers. The question of, how do I know when it's time to make the jump from part-time to full-time photographer? And if I've had this conversation once, I've had it 100 times. Everybody wants to know, when is it time? When is it right to make the jump? A lot of times I meet with people who have full-time jobs that they are in, and they're going, I don't know how to let go of a full-time salary and trust that I'm going to be able to make enough with my photography once I make the jump to full-time. And let me just say, I totally get it. I've actually been there myself. I had a full-time job in 2015 working at a church when I was getting into photography. It was agonizing over that, I don't know, year and a half where I was trying to figure out, is it time to make the jump? How do I know when it's time? And so today I want to hit on a few questions that you can ask yourself to figure out, is the time right for you as a photographer to make the jump from part-time to full-time? So let's dive in, shall we? Question number one, do I have any momentum in my business right now? What do I mean by do I have any momentum in my business? I mean, is your business growing? Is it trending towards more and more bookings? If you didn't have a full-time job, would you be moving in a direction of being able to support yourself full-time with your photography? If nobody is booking you right now, if your biggest challenge is like, man, nobody will book me. Nobody's wanting to bite on this thing. Nobody's wanting to fork out money to pay me to be their photographer. Probably not a good time just yet for you to consider making the jump, because here's the reality. Being a full-time photographer does not instantly just create more bookings. What being a full-time photographer does is it turbocharges any momentum you already had before you made the jump. So if you're looking at your numbers, you're going, man, people are starting to book, revenue's picking up, I'm feeling like things are trending in a good direction. Well, that's a good sign that you're leaning towards being able to be in a position to make the jump to full-time. But how do you even measure that? Well, first of all, it's going to be different from every single person. But as a general guideline, here are a couple things that I would encourage you to consider. Number one, momentum for most of us is going to look like being able to generate enough in your part-time job to offset your basic monthly expenses. Now, again, this is going to vary for everybody, right? If you have a spouse who is bringing in a full-time revenue and you're doing this on the side, it may look totally different for you. But as just a baseline for the conversation, ask yourself, could I cover my basic monthly living expenses with what I'm currently bringing in from my photography? Another great question you can ask is, what percentage of my full-time income am I currently bringing in from my part-time income with my photography? This was one that I really agonized over when I was making the jump, because there's this tendency to think I need to replace 100% of my income from my full-time salary before I'm able to make the jump. And I want to just bust that myth up real quick, because here is something that so many of us forget when we consider making the jump from part-time to full-time. Is that when you are working part-time on your photography business, that means you've got another 50 hours a week that you're putting into your full-time job. Those hours are suddenly freed up when you make the leap to full-time with your photography. So let's just, for the sake of round numbers, let's say you're currently making $50,000 a year in your full-time job, and you're currently making about $25,000 a year in your part-time job. That $25,000 you're making each year, you're making that spending maybe 10, 15 hours a week working on your side hustle. Maybe those of you that are really pushing it, you're going 20, 25 hours a week on your photography. But now add in another 50 hours that you've got from your full-time job that you're already used to devoting to work. Well, now all of a sudden, all that time is going to get put into your photography business. Well, do you think you're just going to continue making the same $25,000 you were making before? No, probably not. And so whether for you it was 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, you got to expect that that number is going to rise once you start putting in all the hours from your full-time job into your part-time job. So as a general rule of thumb, I would say most of the photographers I've worked with, most of the photographers I've spoken with are averaging around 3 times the income once they make the leap from part-time to full-time. So you can look and go, all right, what am I making right now? And as a general baseline, go, what would happen if I made 3 times that? And that's a good reference point for you. The second question that I would encourage you to ask when considering making the jump from part-time to full-time is, do I have any money stored up in savings? This is a critical question. In fact, I sat down with a photographer friend of mine. Her name is Cassie, and we had a great conversation. A lot of tears in this conversation because Cassie had this dream to be full-time with her business. Cassie was an amazing photographer, and she couldn't wait to go full-time. She was ready to leave her full-time job in the past and go full-time with her photography business. But as we started talking about the reality of that, you could just tell that like the weight of making that jump was weighing so heavy on her. And I know for so many of you watching this, that's you too. Like the thought of what if this whole thing fails and blows up in my face, it's scary and it's heavy and stressful to think about. And so as we started digging into like what's going on, what's the source of that fear, that stress that you're feeling, it turned out my friend Cassie had no money saved up in savings. And when I posed the question to her, Cass, what if you had, like number one, how much would it take you to live for 3 months? Even if you made no money. And once we figured out that number, I said, okay, well, Cassie, that's not a huge number that we're talking about. If you had that sitting in a bank account somewhere right now, how much would that change how you feel about making the jump from part-time to full-time? And you could just see her light up and she was like, oh my gosh, I would walk into my job tomorrow and quit. And all of a sudden, it was like this light bulb went off for her that having a safety net of savings stored up already before making the jump was going to be a game changer in terms of having the confidence to make the jump. And so for any of you who are in a similar boat as Cassie and going, gosh, I'd love to make the jump, but I don't have anything saved up to make the jump right now, go again, look back at your living expenses, the basics you would need to survive, and look at what it would take to have 3 to 6 months of that saved up. If you already have that, great. You're in a great position to start looking at making the jump to full-time. If you don't have that saved up, then start looking at and forming a game plan for what would it take if I were to really just tighten the purse strings a little bit for the next season. What would it take to get to a place where I had 3 to 6 months of my basic living expenses covered? Then, once you have that in your savings account, dream a little bit. Be a little bit courageous because you know that even if your business, which is already drawing in money doing it part-time, even if it all of a sudden just went to where you were making nothing every month, you know you have 3 to 6 months safety net to fall back on. Now, question number 3 that every photographer should ask when considering making the jump to part-time to full-time is, do I have any debt to pay off? Why is this an important question? Well, if you know anything about me, you know I'm a huge Dave Ramsey fan. You know I'm a big fan of living debt-free. If you have anything other than your mortgage on your debt sheet, credit card debt, student loan debt, anything like that, here's the reality. Jumping to full-time with your photography business and running your photography business full-time and relying on that as your source of income can be stressful. Okay, it can be really stressful. And so I just want to encourage you right now, if you've got debt all of your debt is just going to be, the stress of that debt and the weight of that debt is just going to be that much heavier on you when you're working for yourself. So do yourself a favor and get out of any cumbersome debt before making that jump to full-time. So again, these are the 3 questions that I would encourage you to ask yourself. Does my business have momentum? Because having a full-time business is not just going to solve the problem of no momentum. It's just going to turbocharge whatever momentum you already have. Second, do I have anything saved up in savings? Saving up 3 to 6 months living expenses is going to give you so much freedom and so much confidence when it comes time to make the jump. And finally, number 3, do I have any outstanding debt? Eliminating the crushing weight of debt from your shoulders is going to allow you to operate with freedom when it comes time to manage the stresses of running your own business. I hope these have been helpful questions for you as you're considering, is it time for me to make the full-time jump in my own business? If you're looking for somebody to coach and mentor you through the process, we do offer coaching and mentoring. You can find that on our website, square8studio.com/education. Would love to talk with you to see if you would be a good fit for us. But in the meantime, dive into these 3 questions in your own business. We'll be back next week with more tips, tricks, and inspiration to help you build your business, wow your clients, and make photo magic. Take care.